So Space Marine Power Armor, Terminator Armor and vehicles just got a massive durability boost. Let's talk about what it might mean for the factions affected by this new Armour of Contempt. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're taking a bit more of a focused look at the new Armour of Contempt rule, a new and rather surprising change to all of the power armoured factions, making them a lot tougher against a lot of incoming fire. I'm not really too surprised that Space Marines and their contemporaries received something in the new balanced data slate, but this one was somewhat of an unexpected buff, effectively giving every single model in their army an increased save of +1 against everything other than AP0 weapons. In this video we'll talk through the buff and exactly what it means, who gets what, and just how powerful it is, then go through each of the factions in turn, and a couple of ways that it might influence what weapons you want to run. So this new rule is Armour of Contempt, a huge boost to power armoured warriors, and weirdly enough not just limited to the folks actually wearing the power armour, but also all of their motor pool and their hangers-on like servitors or cultists. Generally though, it's more meaningful the higher that your saving throw is. In terms of who gets the buff, it's anyone who's Adepta Sororitas, so all Space Marines, Grey Knights though not Dread Knights, Chaos Space Marines, though I believe that Fallen have fallen through the gap in the keywords appropriately enough, and they don't have either Heretic Astartes or Adeptus Astartes as their keywords. Death Guard and Thousand Sons do both get the buff. A lot of people were saying that they initially didn't, but they do also have the Heretic Astartes keyword, so they do. And the Sisters of Battle get it as well, though not their Ministorum units, as they don't have the Adepta Sororitas keyword. The buff really is quite wide-ranging, almost everyone gets it in the army. The only ones that don't are the people who bear shields that already improved their saving throw, so Storm Shields, Combat Shields and similar, and also Celestian Sacrosancts, who kind of had their shield rules already baked into their own datasheet's profile. As well as that, anything that has a rule that modifies an attack's AP, such as certain warlord traits and relics, also won't gain the rule, making any of those abilities a lot less valuable to be honest. And I did see some people saying that maybe Rubric Marines wouldn't be affected by this. The All Is Dust rule improves their save against damage 1 weapons, but because it improves their save and doesn't modify the AP of the incoming attack, then actually they get away scot-free, and they get this as well. I think the Thousand Sons will be pretty jealous if they were the only Space Marines excluded from this. I guess at the moment it's only going to be the Adeptus Custodes that are left out of the Power Armor Call Crew. In terms of what you get, it worsens the enemy's AP attacks by 1, so AP1 becomes AP0, and AP-2 becomes AP-1. It applies to all attacks ranged and melee, and it's a crazily powerful rule. The only attacks that aren't going to be affected by this are things that are AP0, as you can't get worse than AP0. You actually can't, it's baked into the core rules. And it won't affect anything that's so much AP that it doesn't matter anyway, say AP-5 or 6 things usually aren't going to care, and of course mortal wounds will be another way of dealing damage that isn't in any way affected by this. In terms of how strong the rule is, it's better on the better save models that you have, so 2+ armor save models will really like it, and it's stronger against the lower AP attacks, so AP-1 and AP-2 are going to feel it a lot more than AP-3 or 4. Compared with before, say a standard 3+ save model will essentially have an extra 50% durability boost against AP-1. So say if you had an AP-1 gun that would usually take 2 shots to kill a Space Marine, it will now take 3 instead. That's a truly colossal durability boost, and AP-1 weapons are going to be pretty bad against Space Marines in general now. That gets gradually worse the more AP that you get. Against AP-4 you're only saving on a 6+, so that's only a 20% durability increase overall. 6 shots needed to take them down over 5, but it's still a very meaningful defensive buff even against that. It gets even worse on 2+ save models like Terminators. AP-1 is still going to be saving only 2+ save now, so they effectively just got double durability against those attacks. And they'll still be saving on 3s against AP-2, again very meaningful. Overall, unless you're getting hit by AP0, which generally isn't effective against these high saves anyway, or if you're being hit by mortal wounds, then this really is going to make power armoured armies a lot harder to shift. And what's more, it does stack with light cover as well, so that makes everything even worse. Say for example, if you hit a Terminator in light cover with a las cannon now, he's still going to be getting a 3+ save against it. Power armor and Terminator armor have both got insanely durable. Generally the defensive numbers are pretty impressive against a very wide range of damage attacks, and it's absolutely going to give a massive power boost to any of the factions affected. I feel like Space Marines and the like are certainly going to be competing with the top tier factions now. If we move on, let's talk through the various armies affected then, and we'll start with Space Marines. In particular, for Space Marine units, Storm Shields tended to be a really common war gear choice, generally priced efficiently enough that they'd help out your durability against most damage types. Interestingly, after the changes, I think that they're rarely actually going to be worth it. Say for example, if you took a Vanguard veteran, who would usually be almost always buying that Storm Shield in for 5 points, the shield will only be helping them out against AP 0 attacks if they don't have cover, and AP -3 or better. What's more, against AP -3 attacks, it only gives them a 25% boost to their durability, which is kind of outweighed by the reduction in cost, as because the Storm Shields cost 20% more of the model, it means that you're only getting very marginal gains on that AP -3 damage, as you could just take more veterans otherwise. Never mind the fact that if you took more veterans, you'd get more combat damage out of them. What I think might drive it even further home, though, is that they give up the option of taking something like a free chainsword as an extra attack along with their lightning claw, so you're losing out on a little bit of free offensive power as well. I think Storm Shields aren't completely dead. They'll still be helpful versus mass AP 0 or very high AP attacks, but maybe just one or two within a unit now, rather than spamming them. Perhaps we might be in the weird age of Vanguard veterans with lightning claws and a single chainsword being the optimal go-to. Otherwise though, I do think that Storm Shields are looking really quite niche. On a captain, they're only going to help out against AP 0. Captains don't care about the invul save as they have one anyway from their Iron Halo. And on Terminators, Storm Shields are basically not something worth paying for anymore. The only thing that they help out against is AP -4 or better, as AP -3 will still be saved on their 4+. So if you want to run Terminators these days, the Thunderhammer Storm Shield ones aren't going to be as much of a go-to. Maybe we might see a shift to things like Lightning Claw and Combi Bolter Relic Terminators, or Chain Fist and Storm Bolter ones. I feel like with this extra rule, things like very cheap Dark Angels, Deathwing Terminators with Lightning Claws and Combi Bolters, they're going to be an absolute nightmare to remove. They've essentially just gained +1 save on top of all of their other layered defensive buffs. Otherwise, within Codex Space Marines, I think the basic troops will really like this change as well. Intercessors and Incursors and things will be really hard to shift on objectives, particularly if they can snag themselves some light cover. Durability is their main thing, and their power armor certainly will be pretty indomitable now. A standard infiltrator in light cover again will still be saving on a 4+ if they're hit by AP -3. It's again really nice for things like Eliminators, they'll be getting their camo cloaks in cover too, and they'll need even higher AP or close combat to dig them out. Otherwise, this also applies to vehicles as well, though I don't think it's really going to change the status quo there very much. Most of the infantry get just as much of a buff as the vehicles do, and the vehicles weren't really all that good before. I still think that the Redemptor Dreadnought is probably going to be the go-to, maybe with even less dependency on getting a 5+ invul save than it had before. In fact, for things with 3+ saves, things like getting light cover from Stealthy might even be more valuable. Otherwise, for vehicles, anything with a 2+ save wins slightly harder than the 3+ save things, so Leviathan Dreadnoughts, Vindicators with Siege Shields, maybe even Land Raiders. And for other interesting things, I think this will really help out Sanguinary Guard with their 2+ saves already and no invuls. And I do find it just a bit funny that Space Marine Servitors will also get the advantage of this rule, so AP -1 weapons will shred them just a little bit less. Outside of the core Space Marines, we have the Grey Knights. Again, maybe not too different here, other than their infantry getting it just a little bit more irritating to shift. As good units that were used in droves already, both strike squads and interceptors are going to be far tougher, and Grey Knights in particular are quite good with the multiple stacking saves type thing, as they already have a way to get permanent light cover at range with their Tide of Shadows. Again, at least theoretically, that means something like an interceptor, even stood completely out in the open, could be tanking las cannons on a 4+ save. Again, as with the other factions, it maybe narrows the gap a little bit with Terminators compared with the rest. Their 2+ armor saves do like it even more than the standard 3+ ones. I guess just by comparison, the biggest losers in the Codex are probably the Dread Knights. I can see why Games Workshop didn't include them in the buff, to be honest, having recently toned them down a bit, and they're already pretty tough and general purpose gun platforms, so maybe having the infantry in general catch up on the Dread Knight's power isn't exactly the worst thing. I must admit though, their relatively low AP guns are really not going to enjoy fighting other power armor now. At least on the flip side, Grey Knights do have decent mortal wound defense, and they put out quite a lot of mortal wounds themselves, so their Marines are seeming really quite tough no matter what angle you attack them from. Next up, we get to the equally power armoured Sisters of Battle. Again, we'll equally love this change pretty much. Most of their infantry do have 3+ saves. And like the rest of the armies, typically they're going to be getting something like a 25% durability buff against a lot of weapons, obviously depending on exactly what AP and fire is incoming. It is kind of interesting for them that the 6 plus involves from their Shield of Faith might actually be a little bit more niche now, so arguably the power boost might be a little bit less for them compared with a lot of the other Space Marines that don't have involve standard. A normal Battle Sister is going to have to be hit by something with a ludicrous AP of 5 if they're actually going to be making use of an unbuffed Shield of Faith save at 6 plus. Perhaps one of the biggest winners within the Codex for the buff are the Paragon Warsuits. Previously, they just really didn't have the durability to hold up to 9th edition firepower, though now they're arguably looking somewhat tanky. They dropped to the 10 points in chapter approved, which is certainly a good start, but now again with a 2 plus save and a minimal invul save, they really are ideal beneficiaries of this rule. They'll be saving things like AP -3 las cannons on a 4 plus. That in combination with their damage -1 isn't too bad, I think. Some of the characters will really enjoy it as well. Celestine and Val with their 2 plus armor certainly won't hurt. And again, it's helpful for their vehicles. Things like multi-melter immolators are going to be a bit better, and rhinos are going to be even tankier than before for delivering things like Repentia. It was kind of interesting to see Valorous Heart get the sort of side grade they get. Their durability was kind of a mini version of this against AP -1 and -2. Now, of course, they get that as standard and improved, but now you can't reroll wounds against them either, the same as Space Marine Salamanders. I'm kind of a bit torn on how good this is. Being able to turn off rerolls on occasion can be really powerful, say if you're fighting Space Marine Lightning Claws, Tauin Montcar, or Death Guard Plague weapons, but against a fair amount of more conventional foes, you're just not going to get any increase in durability at all. For me, I think I'd still be a bit more tempted by things like Bloody Rose or Ebon Chalice. It'll be cool to see if Valorous Heart starts seeing more play though. In terms of losers for the change, the Celestian Sacrosancts really have been hit by nerfs all over. They got a points bump in chapter approved, their bodyguard rule has just been broken, and now they don't even really benefit from this rule either due to their Sacrosanct shields. I feel at this stage they should just really be set back to the points cost that they were originally. They're a bit of an unfortunate case of Games Workshop managing to treble nerf a unit between their various balance updates. As well as that, it does really mean that Ministorum units are going to be falling yet further behind the standard Sororitas. Most of them are perhaps a little bit niche. I still think that Arcoflagellants are still kind of interesting, though it looks like between the Penitent engines and the Mortifiers basically seem like flatly the superior choice now. Ignoring AP -1 when you've only got a 4 plus save is a really big deal. Next up we move into the Forces of Chaos, and the Death Guard are again an army that are really going to like this. In particular, Death Guard Terminators, despite their recent points nerfs, are now looking terrifyingly tough to shift again, and I feel like they're going to be seeing more play anyway, because Games Workshop have just gifted them the Objective Secured rule. They just have so many barriers to damage going on now, a 2 plus armor save, Armour of Contempt, 4 plus invul save, all on top of toughness 5 3 wounds and -1 damage. They can even get -1 to hit as well from a spell. On top of all that, they're usually a very easy unit to get a cover save on as well, so AP -2 weapons will still be paying off a 2 plus armor. And again, you're just going to really need mortal wounds or a ridiculous amount of high AP attacks to shift them from the battlefield. I do kind of wonder whether Games Workshop might have had the foresight to increase their points in chapter approved because they knew that this was coming, though I'm a little bit unsure when you look at other units like Sacrosancts, who also went up and then went on to get nerfed in multiple ways. Otherwise, it's also good news for Plague Marines. It's a helpful toughness buff which will help them hold their objectives a bit better. Within the troop slot, I think that makes them narrow the gap even further on the more expensive Poxwalkers. You might still want minimal investment in troops and go for the cheap Poxwalkers, but the Plague Marines are potentially looking very tough by comparison now. For the Demon Engines, the Plague Burst Crawlers are looking tankier than ever. One of 40k's harder to shift vehicles just got an extra +1 save rule against AP -1 and AP -2. Though admittedly their mortar has been toned down a bit by those new barrage rules. Finally, I thought that the Suppurating Plate's Demon Prince could be quite interesting. That was already a pretty reasonable upgrade, and it's yet another good way to get another very high save model that's going to take maximal advantage of this rule. I'd say maybe the biggest losers by comparison for the change are Poxwalkers. They still do get the rule technically, though they're not going to make use of it all that much unless they're in cover, and then only against AP -1. As I said at the start, generally higher save units like this more. The same is maybe true of Mortarion. The only benefit that he gets from this is AP -1 attacks coming at him, so in general he hasn't really gained all that much toughness when things like the Terminators and Plague Marines have gained a lot. On to their Sorceress Brothers next, and I think it's pretty well equally good news for the Thousand Suns. Scarab Occult Terminators are already one of the most competitive units in the Codex, and they again really love this rule. They're a unit that's very easy to layer on multiple stacking durability buffs, and throwing another very powerful one into the mix is great, and it makes them even a bit less reliable on having a 4+ invul save from the spell, as now they just won't even care about having that 4+ invul save unless you're getting AP-4 fire directed at them. You can use the spell for something else, or maybe just more mortal wounds. For the Rubric Marines and the Scarabs, all this dust does stack with this really quite nicely. Rubric Marines, even in the open, will be saving against damage 1 AP-1 shots on a 2+, and still get a 2+ save against AP-2 attacks if you have light cover as well. Really quite crazy, seeing as that's some reasonably decent AP incoming. Overall, there's pretty much nothing that's particularly efficient to fire against Rubric Marines now, as AP0 is already well covered by all this dust, as most AP0 tends to be damage 1, and then you're getting +1 save against just about everything else. Again, with the Sisters though, arguably it might make the 5+ invul save just a little bit less meaningful, as you're going to have slightly less high AP firepower that's actually going to reach it. Again, just by comparison, anything that's mainly relying on the invul save for durability isn't going to be buffed as much. Zangors and Cultists will occasionally make good use of this, but it won't come up anywhere near as often as the Terminators or the Rubrics. Maybe not the best for the internal balance of the Codex, as already the Rubrics and Scarabs were far better than Zangors. To be honest though, it's usually better that the Rubrics and the Terminators are better. They just feel like a bit more of the heart of the army compared with the Goat Birds. For Chaos Space Marines, I think everything's a little bit speculative, and I think it's not really quite as worth doing too much in-depth analysis on them. Games Workshop's basically teased their codex and new models are coming soon. They're probably going to be the next one after Knights, but the buff is still pretty handy to have in the meantime, I guess. My prediction would be that this buff is going to be present in the new Chaos Marine Codex, and that's why we're seeing it unveiled now, so it's farmed out to things like Death Guard and Thousand Sons as well, so that all the Space Marines have a fairly level playing field, even when Chaos Marines are released. In any case, in the meantime, it's going to be good for the basic Chaos Marines. They really are very cheap now, even if they're only 1 wounds at the moment, and they are going to be very tough for holding objectives, weirdly meaning that you need really high AP fire, but also anything more than damage 1 is wasted. As well as that, everything with a 2+ save will really like it. Terminators and Obliterators will like it, just like anything else with a 2+ save with this rule. It helps out the vehicles too, of course. Things like the Lord of Skulls will get a bit tankier versus lower AP fire. So now we've covered all the power armor that actually gets the benefit of this rule, what are the other factions to do when confronted by all this indomitable ceramite armor? In general, I think that this is a big enough change that it's actually going to warrant a response from enemy lists, and even from the various power armored factions teching up to fight their rivals. AP-1 weapons just suddenly got a fair bit worse against a relatively large chunk of the field. When you're playing against Space Marines, things like Orc Choppers, Eldar Shurikens unless they roll 6s, Tyranid Flesh Borers, or Necron Gauss Flayers, they're all going to be essentially hitting at AP0. It makes every unit that's bearing them into a lot more of a waste of space if they do happen to be matched up against Space Marines, even if their AP-1 will be quite good against the rest of the field. There literally are a crazy amount of efficient damage dealers affected by this. I could go on and name all sorts of things: Tau Smart Missile Systems, also recently hit by the Barrage nerf, Hecatrix Blades from the Drakari Witches, heavy bolters and autocannons wherever they may be, and generic Space Marine kit such as the Astartes Chainsword or Bolt Rifles. AP-2 is also pretty heavily hit as well, not quite as crazily bad. Their damage output is only cut by a quarter, whereas the AP-1 ones is cut by a third. In general, I think if you want to take your list up against the Space Marine power armor, you're probably going to want to move a fair bit away from loads and loads of AP-1 and 2 weapons, and then go for either AP-0 or AP-3 or better guns, as AP0 won't be affected by the change whatsoever, and it'll still be good for clearing out low save units in other armies, and AP-3 will be affected, but not nearly as much as the lower AP stuff. As well as that, if they're available, mortal wounds again are completely unaffected by this. I'm sure Tyranid players will be very happy with that, with things like Maleceptors on the go. And if you do have any choices that ignore light cover, I feel like that's also going to be very relevant against the new Marines. Light cover in combination with Armour of Contempt is really going to make certain units very hard to shift. If you do have some efficient damage dealers that can do that just incidentally, they might just have a little bit more value. Overall though, this is really quite a big change to the game, perhaps one of the single most meaningful army buff special rules that's been introduced in the whole game. I'm sure there's all sorts of ramifications of this that I've not thought about, so please let me know how you're thinking about making use of it down in the comments below, and how you're planning to tech up to fight the armies that are going to be deploying units with this, what choices might you be taking, and what things might you be dropping out. If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k things coming, with new videos out just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description. Making all this content on YouTube does take an awful lot of time and effort, so if you are enjoying regularly, any support is enormously appreciated, as it is the main thing that keep all the videos coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.